Oi, oi. All right. This is Doodle Review. I'm Grant, working to give you non-stop daily music content and reviews on all types of music. This week, got a mix of old and new for you, looking at some new stuff from Jake Shears, Albert Hammond Jr., Rob Grant, that's Lana Del Rey's daddy, and old stuff from Missy Elliott, Sade, and Mondo Generator. You'll notice that I've put up two episodes very close to each other. That's because going forward my reviews are going to go live here on YouTube first, so if you're keen to hear what I think about new albums, do give us a subscribe and you'll get all the new episodes straight in your feed. This week it's kind of all been about Threads, hasn't it? Kind of embarrassed to say, though not really, that I've jumped on it. I've been thinking about getting a Twitter for Doodle Review for a while, and this just seemed like more convenient way to do it, and so far it's fun, though I'm still trying to find the right tone of voice. I'm one of those guys that, clearly, because here we are, by virtue of this channel, has a very striking need for validation, and that makes me want to try and be funny every possible opportunity, but I usually find in any text-based format, especially on social, it's a swing and a miss for me. So if you want to watch the car crash that is me trying not be a robot online, give me a follow there. Anyway, on with the show. This is a loose concept album, where having the context of that concept really helped me love and understand it. Prior to reading that Shears wanted Last Man Dancing to actually represent a night out by starting at kind of a mainstream pop sing-along vibe and slowly evolving into deep, dark but euphoric club music as the night progresses, I was kind of left a bit bewildered by the record and thought the album had a bit of a struggle with multiple personalities. Rightly or wrongly though, understanding that the intention was for that very thing has kind of made everything fall into place, and I'm happy to walk back that initial opinion. Where Shears' first and really great solo record pulled from Bowie, Iggy and Elton, this record loosely starts in that place but immediately adds a generous helping of George Michael, Chic and Nile Rodgers onto the palette. Favourites from the first party half of the record include Really Big Deal, which evokes a similar tongue-in-cheek sing-along vibe to Big Bushy Mustache from the previous record, and Last Man Dancing, which will give anyone missing the Scissor Sisters a welcome shot of their feel-good dance pop rock blend. It's at this point we move from the party into the club, with 8Ball's piano smoothing the transition on one hand, but the 4 on the floor and bouncy synth making it clear we're now hitting that post-midnight part of the night. Blending seamlessly, 8Ball gives way to Devil Came Down to the Dance Floor, with a stellar guest vocal from Amber Martin. The big house moments continue at pace from here, complete with features from Big Frida and spoken word samples of Jane Fonda and Iggy Pop, before a final sing-along moment with Diamonds Don't Burn. I think maybe Radio Eyes is the only track that falters slightly in this run, but just by virtue of being a little bit long. But honestly, that's a small complaint against an album that ultimately achieves what it sets out to, taking you on a night out with Jake Shears from the party to the club and to the dance floor. I love it. I think it's an 8 out of 10. There's an obvious joke to be made when coming to write the review for an album called Melodies on Hiatus, an album that I ultimately found a little underwhelming, but it isn't actually the melodies that are on hiatus on this Albert Hammond Jr. album, it's the overall concept of editing that just seemed to sit this one out. At nearly 70 minutes, this album is lengthy and not nearly diverse enough sound-wise to kind of warrant that runtime. Hammond's last album, Francis Trouble, saw the Strokes guitarist hone in on a uniquely smooth new wave sound, and this is very much continued on Melodies on Hiatus. However, whereas Francis succeeded by being short, sharp and punchy with a couple of ragged rockers chucked in to mix it up, this record is bloated with forgettable tracks, lumped predominantly on the second half, and while songs do shift tempos, sonically there is just not enough variety keep you that interested. With that being said, there are some cool songs here. Thoughtful Distress, Memo of Hate and One Chance are all catchy, infectious new wave bangers that I'm certainly thankful for. And for all my complaining about the lack of variety, there is one exception in the song Caught by Night, which could be like something of Radiohead's Hail to the Thief album. It's very interesting, although that rattly percussion is grating AF. I would give it, I'm like 50-50 on this album. It's literally half great, half not. It's 5 out of 10. The first example of reverse nepotism I've ever heard of, Lost at Sea, is a record from Rob Grant, father of Lizzie Grant, aka Lana Del Rey. Although Grant is clearly a very talented and emotive pianist, for me it's the features from his daughter that provide the most enjoyment on this very elegant, somber, but ultimately very samey album. Each song on the album is clearly very lovingly played and really does tug at the heartstrings, which is always an achievement when you can achieve that without vocals or lyrics. But over the course of the entire album, the earnestness of the compositions begin to grate on me. The impact feels lessened with each dramatic arpeggiated chord progression. And that's not to say that there aren't things to enjoy here. As mentioned, both Lana features are truly gorgeous. The first being the title track Lost at Sea, a melancholic but optimistic song about being lost without knowing until being found. And the second, a more classically like meta Lana track that is both an ode to her father and seems to kind of recount her accomplishments seen through his eyes and the pride that that brings to her. I also enjoy the more upbeat composition poetry of Wind and Waves and occasional production flourishes like the strings on In the Dying Light of the Day and the ambient deep ocean swells, which includes guitars plucked to imitate radar. And it's moments like those that demonstrate the potential of a more dynamic, interesting record that we just didn't quite get here. I would give it a 5 out of 10. Supa Dupa Fly is the first record from Missy Elliott, beginning a string of well-regarded albums and a long-standing partnership with then up-and-coming producer Timbaland. My immediate observation when first listening to this was similar to the thoughts I had on Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, though, because it's crazy how little actual rapping there is on this hour-long record. Similar to my thoughts on Hill, Missy Elliott's voice is fantastic, and the songs that are more melodic are often as great as the rap tracks, but it always seems odd to me that someone with the capabilities, and in Missy's case, the sheer endearing personality of her flow, doesn't get to deploy one of her greatest assets. That personality and flow really shine on tracks like Is It Ah, and Pass the Blunt, and wow, I couldn't sound more white then. And some of my more favourite melodic tracks include Friendly Skies and Don't Be Coming. Timbaland's production on this record is insanely good, and it's easy to see how just a few short years later he would be behind an endless stream of hits for other artists. That being said, there are points where the production I think is a little self-indulgent, with tracks being allowed to go on way longer than necessary without any vocal contributions, like The Rain, and They Don't Want to F With Me. It's also obviously impressive and kind of a trademark, but the beatboxing gets a little cringe. Elliott herself isn't above a little self-indulgence here either. I've got nothing against the sentiment of the I'm such a good rapper refrain on I'm Talking, but man, that melody is so bad. It just sounds like something you'd sing to yourself around the house. This is a varied album that is a great introduction to the charm and personality of Missy Elliott with fantastic production from a master. It just left me craving a few more Missy bars. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. When researching for my review, I discovered that Sade is considered a prominent artist in the genre of Quiet Storm, which, if like me, you didn't know, is effectively like a version of adult contemporary, but labelled on traditionally black music genres like R&B. I've always thought that adult contemporary could be one of the biggest backhanded compliments to pay someone in music. I think it was kind of created to signal a sort of sophisticated, smooth, glossy pop music, but ultimately it kind of became code for bland, easy listening background music to load the dishwasher to. The latter is a descriptor you should be punished for using if ever you level it at Sade. You only need to listen to a song like the opener of this record, No Ordinary Love, to recognise the incredibly rich production. And this is a song that at first glance is very simple. The song almost entirely rests on that bass groove, just locked in with those simple drums that actually take us through the entire track without much variation. And of course, Sade herself then blesses this total vibe with her just amazing vocals. But then you get to that snare sound. You start to pick up on things like that, and then you start to pick up on like other new things and textures. You realise just how sophisticated this arrangement and this production really is. Touches like the crunch on those power chordy guitars that are almost too heavy to have any business being on a track like this, to that outro where you keep thinking it's ended, but then they bring in another section. And, you know, there's no spotlight dancing here. While we get little solos and touches every new element is just so tasteful. From the new vocal part to a new guitar flourish, it's a masterpiece. Now, to be fair, I'm not without criticism of this album. I wouldn't ever go so far as to blaspheme with that adult contemporary label, but a couple tracks here are a spark short of really even being able to call them slow burners. Like a Tattoo and Pearls just failed to take me anywhere, and I know that Pearls has like a deeper meaning to it, but it still didn't. But it's actually pretty impressive that this album only struggles in these small instances, because overall Love Deluxe marked a bit of a climb down from some of the bigger production moments on previous Sade albums like Stronger Than Pride, which featured more energy and promise that had big brass moments. Love Deluxe instead creates, well, I guess the genre label kind of makes sense now, because it really does create Quiet Storm, a smouldering and deeply groove-centric album. I know it's ranked as a classic on some lists. I would give it a 7 out of 10, but that doesn't mean it's not amazing. Definitely one to check out with some incredible tracks. Generally, I pride myself on having a comprehensive knowledge of everything Queens of the Stone Age related, but this album by former bass player Nick Oliveri remained a strange blank spot for me. Released in the wake of the band's breakout success with Songs for the Deaf and prior to Oliveri's departure from the band, Drug Problem is Mondo Generator's second full-length record. The lineup of the Generator is a nebulous thing, but this time around the group assembled is a powerhouse. With Brant Bjork of Caius on drums, Dave Catching, also ex-Queens of the Stone Age, but more notably owner of Rancho de la Luna on guitar, and Molly Maguire of Yellow No. 5 on bass, with guest contributors such as Blag Dahlia, Josh Homme, and others from the Queen's ranks. Oliveri was always the unchained human id to Homme's swing and sensitivity when they played together, and so an album written without such a counterweight would always lead to something wild and exciting, but also kind of uneven. So High, So Low is an apt song title because it accurately describes the heavy songs here. That track is certainly a high, although I do prefer the version on his follow-up Dead Planet record, as is Do the Head Right and FY I'm Free, but others like Here We Come, Open Up and Bleed, and Like You Want, while they have some cool elements, feel a little underwritten, in some cases musically or lyrically. As is always the case with Oliveri, despite his wild man persona, it's actually his softer songs that are the best of the bunch. His punk sensibility meshed with his underrated knack for a sweet melody lead to some great songs like Day I Die and All I Can Do, and the two Mark Lanegan featuring tracks are my favourite here. And also the most completely original sounding. Detroit has a really cool weirdo rockabilly vibe that echoes that sound we hear on the Def Records Another Love Song. And Four Corners is just a fantastic, dramatic, epic melding an infectious acoustic melody with heavy choruses. Overall, this album is an album that never gives you what you expect. At its worst, it gives you head-nodding punk bangers. At its best, it's some seriously incredible songwriting that sadly seems to have been well underrated as time has gone on. It's patchy, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10, but it's worth a listen if you're a fan. Alright, bit of a random collection of artists this week, I'll give you that, but I hope you enjoyed it. Hit up my other channels as usual for some extra content. I'm going to be dropping a Barbenheimer playlist very soon. I want to do a deep dive on the music in The Bear Season 1 before the new season drops, as well as a bunch of other stuff. Cheers for watching, see you next time. Peace!